Last week we dove into our first 5 queer history facts no one talks about. So today we're continuing that series with 5 more historical queer moments you won't learn anywhere else. Let's get into it. Number 1, Wakashu in Edo-era Japan. In pre-modern Japan, the concept of gender was much more fluid than our modern binary understanding, and this is especially true when it comes to a group known as Wakashu. The term Wakashu referred to adolescent boys who were celebrated for their beauty, androgyny, and eroticism. Because of their delicate features, soft bodies, and childlike innocence, they were highly desired by both men and women, sometimes acting as romantic partners for other men or engaging in sexual activity with older males. The waka style was particularly popular among aristocratic men, and the most attractive waka could become immensely wealthy through patronage. Wakashus were also frequently depicted in shunga, which was a genre of erotic art popular during the Edo period. These paintings often portrayed idealized versions of wakashus engaged in sexual acts with adult men or other wakashus. However, as Japan came under increasing Western influence during the Meiji period, traditional gender roles and rigid gender binaries began to be imposed on Japanese society. The once celebrated Wakashu were seen as deviant, and the practice of taking young male lovers became associated with perversion. Despite this, there have been recent attempts to revive awareness and appreciation for Wakashu culture. Some scholars argue that the Wakashu phenomenon was not merely a product of Japan's unique aesthetic sensibilities, but rather a reflection of a more nuanced and accepting attitude towards gender and sexuality that prevailed in pre-modern Japan. Number 2, queer warriors of Dahomey. Now, Benin, the Ahosi or Mino of Dahomey, now part of Benin in West Africa, were an all-female army whose existence predates the one depicted in the film The Woman King. Emerging in the 16th century, the Ahosi were part of a larger military force known as the Daka, which was made up of both male and female soldiers. However, over time, the Ahosi evolved into a distinct unit comprising exclusively female warriors. These women were not only fierce fighters, but also lived outside of the traditional cisgender, heterosexual norms of their society. While there is limited written documentation about the Ahosi due to the oral histories of the Kingdom of Dahomey, scholars have gained insights into their culture and practices through various accounts, including those by European travelers and missionaries who visited Dahomey in the 19th century. These accounts describe a society that had a more nuanced understanding of gender and sexuality than many Western societies of the time. Specifically, they mention the existence of queer partnerships among the Ahosi, which were socially accepted and even encouraged. The women were allowed to have harems of both male and female lovers, and there were also instances of same-sex partnerships between warriors. However, during the colonial era, these aspects of their culture were largely erased from official historical narratives. The Portuguese, who arrived first, did make some early references to same-sex relations among the women soldiers, noting that they had harems just like the men did. But as colonization progressed, the emphasis shifted to portraying the Ahosi as solely a military force to serve the colonial narrative of African societies being primitive and patriarchal. It wasn't until much later that scholars began to piece together a more accurate and inclusive account of the Ahosi and their place in the history of the Kingdom of Dahomey. Number 3, 2 spirit nations across Turtle Island. Before colonization, many indigenous nations across Turtle Island or North America recognized two-spirit people, an umbrella term for those who hold both masculine and feminine spirits, thus encompassing a wide range of gender identities and sexual orientations. Two-spirit people were not merely tolerated, but often held as crucial members of their communities, serving as spiritual leaders, healers, and even matchmakers. They played a significant role in ceremonies, helping to ensure balance between the genders and upholding the cultural teachings of their respective nations. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, comprised of the Mohawk, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca nations, is a prominent example. Within this confederacy, the term Two-Spirit was coined in the late 1990s to replace the term gay, which had negative connotations. The term Two-Spirit encapsulates a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all things and acknowledges the inherent duality present in life. It speaks to the understanding that within each individual there can be both masculine and feminine qualities regardless of their physical sex. However, the arrival of colonizers brought with it a violent erasure and suppression of Two-Spirit identities, traditional gender roles, forced assimilation policies, and the pathologization of non-heterosexual behavior under Western medicine all contributed to the marginalization of Two-Spirit individuals. Despite these efforts, Two-Spirit people have not been broken. Today, Two-Spirit activists and scholars are working tirelessly to revitalize and reclaim their cultures, ensuring that younger generations understand their inherent value and the vital contributions their ancestors have made and continue to make. Number 4, the queer monks of Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has a long and rich history dating back centuries, and within its traditions lie some unique and often overlooked aspects related to same-sex relationships. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, monastic brotherhoods were a significant part of religious life. Members of these brotherhoods lived together in communal settings, dedicating their lives to prayer, service, and spiritual pursuits. The relationships that developed within these brotherhoods were deep and multifaceted, going beyond the typical understanding of monastic vows of celibacy. Scholars such as First Class and Mohammed have explored the nature of these relationships, arguing that they often took on the characteristics of marriage. This included elements like intimacy, devotion, ritual, and commitment. The relationships were characterized by intense emotional bonds and practical collaborations in religious tasks. Members of these brotherhoods would often take on specific roles and responsibilities, working together to maintain the community and fulfill its spiritual obligations. In some cases, these partnerships involved deep physical intimacy, which was understood as a way to express the profound connection between members. The Church's language, while rooted in Christian terminology, could also be interpreted to accommodate same-sex partnerships. Terms like intimate friend or intimate companion were used to describe the close relationships shared between members of these brotherhoods. Despite these practices and the lack of condemnation of same-sex relationships in the Bible, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has not formally recognized or blessed same-sex unions. This might be partly because of the influence of local contexts, where acknowledging such relationships could have resulted in social and political backlash. However, these intimate relationships within Ethiopian Orthodox monasteries offer a compelling example of how expressions of love and commitment can manifest in diverse ways across cultures and time periods. Number 5, the Nazis persecuted queer people in the Holocaust. The persecution of queer people under the Nazis was widespread and severe. While the pink triangle has been reclaimed by queer activists as a symbol of resilience and pride, we rarely talk about the full scale of this persecution during the Holocaust. Over 50,000 queer people were imprisoned in concentration camps for various reasons, including homosexuality, transgender identity, and cross-dressing. However, it's crucial to remember that the persecution of queer people by the Nazis wasn't limited to those who identified as gay or lesbian. Trans people also faced horrific persecution under Nazi ideology. Transgender women were imprisoned in concentration camps alongside gay men, enduring similar brutal treatments. The Nazis viewed any form of gender nonconformity as a threat to the racial purity and national rejuvenation they sought to achieve. Despite facing immense adversity, some transgender women demonstrated remarkable courage and resilience within the camps. Notable figures like Lily Elby and Anda Ausbildung defied the odds by protecting children and fellow prisoners, offering moments of humanity amidst the darkness. However, their stories, along with those of countless others, were largely erased from official documentation during the Holocaust. Queer survivors often weren't recognized as victims until decades later. This erasure perpetuated harmful stereotypes and misconceptions about the persecution of queer people during the Holocaust. It's imperative that we challenge this historical revisionism and ensure that the stories and experiences of queer victims are included in Holocaust education and remembrance efforts. Only by acknowledging the full scope of the Nazi regime's atrocities against queer people can we honor their memory, learn from their experiences, and work toward a more inclusive and tolerant future. So there you have it, 5 more queer history facts no one talks about. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more untold queer stories, check out part 1 of this series. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an eye-opening episode. Thanks for watching.